Let's talk about the Boston Celtics here on Any Given Thursday by Chat Sports. You should subscribe to Celtics Today, which is what I was about to say, youtube.com/CelticsTV.
We have so many channels here.
I know. It's hard to keep up. Harrison and Chase, we're going to get into a lot here. And how about trading for Damian Lillard, Chase? You sent me this link. Jalen and Jacoby, who talk hoops for ESPN, they basically said, look, go get Damian Lillard, even if it means trading Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown. So we'll kind of talk about this. We'll talk about each guy, whichever guy makes more sense, and we'll explore this possibility.
I'm not quite hitting the panic button just yet with the Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum tandem. It seemed as though Jalen and Jacoby were. And they were like, you know what? It's clear. It hasn't worked, and it's not working right now. Trade away one of the two, basically for Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
And this is something that we've talked about a lot. There's a lot of dissension going on within this organization. Marcus Smart calling out Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum prior to their game on Wednesday night, in which they finally won. There was a team meeting, which got really, really emotional. Things haven't been right for this franchise in a little while, Harrison.
Yeah.
And it's weird because the Celtics have always been looked at as a well-run franchise, one that is a well-oiled machine. They're tied with the Lakers for the most championships in the course of NBA history, and the Lakers won some of those titles outside of Los Angeles, so some people credit Boston with having the most titles. But things haven't been right for a bit, and I'm a little bit concerned about that because the culture was a problem last year with Brad Stevens as head coach and Danny Ainge as president of basketball operations. Brad Stevens takes over for Danny Ainge. Ime Udoka is now the first-year head coach, and things still aren't right, and we're seeing a lot of the same problems this year that we saw last year.
I think we thought that, or the Celtics thought, I should say, and I'll get to my point guard thought in a second, but I think they thought, okay, if we just promote Brad Stevens to the front office and get a new head coach, this will fix itself, because they didn't really make any roster changes.
Not many.
If we're being completely honest.
Yeah.
They had Dennis Schroeder.
They said, hey, Marcus Smart, you've never been a true point guard. Let's sign you to a $50+ million contract extension so you can play point guard.
4 years, $77 million.
Yeah, even worse.
$20 million
Robert Williams was the
Robert
50.
Williams, which
yeah.
I didn't love that deal either, for being completely honest. To me, the biggest issue with the Boston Celtics is they don't have a point guard. They do not have a point guard. You can't just say, well, Marcus Smart is listed as a point guard, and he does some things well, so let's just pay him like a starting caliber point guard, and then he'll be one. Guys, Marcus Smart's been in the NBA for like 7 years. He is who he is. Now, he's a good player, and he has a role on this team, and he is valuable for any franchise because he can get hot shooting sometimes. He's an excellent defender. He's an excellent culture guy. He's the heart and soul of this team. All of that is true, but that doesn't mean you just magically wake up and you're a good point guard. He's never been that. Even at Oklahoma State in college, he was not a point guard. He was I'm the best player on this team, so I'm the one who brings the ball down the court. That's what he was. That doesn't translate to the NBA. Like, he's never been a pass-first guy. He's never been a guy who can create a ton of offense for others. So I don't really know what Boston expected when they gave him this big contract. And again, Chase, it doesn't mean he can't be a good player on this team, but I think the core issue in Boston is they don't have a true facilitator.
No.
And that's a problem in today's NBA.
Yeah, and I think you need that. And if you don't have a scoring point guard like a Damian Lillard or Steph Curry, you need a Rajon Rondo. And the Celtics don't have either of those. They have Marcus Smart, really good defensive player, way too spotty and inconsistent offensively.
Yes.
Dennis Schroeder, probably an overrated bench piece
really
at this
a
point.
combo guard.
And the only point guard that you have on the team is a Peyton Pritchard. That's about it.
And he's score-first guy.
And he's a score-first guy. I mean, he went on heaters at the University of Oregon when he was playing in the NCAA tournament and in the Pac-12.
So that's why this continues to get brought up. And, of course, you and I have talked about this. Yeah, in crunch time, can Jayson Tatum bring the ball up and initiate the offense? Yes. Can Jaylen Brown do that? Yes. But you can't do that. They're not point guards. You can't do that over the course of games throughout an 82-game season. So the question becomes, if you want to go trade for a Dame Lillard who can drop 30 on any given night, but also generate offense for others, even if he's not a true, Chris Paul type, he's clearly a very good point guard. Who would you rather trade? Type JT for Jayson Tatum, type JB for Jaylen Brown. We'll give our thoughts, but first you give us yours. Who would you rather trade to go get Damian Lillard? So let's talk one at a time here, Chase. Let's talk about Jayson Tatum, who most folks around the NBA would say he is the prized possession in Boston right now. Hung 50 on the Nets in the playoffs last year. He is capable of scoring with the best of them in the NBA. Would you consider doing this? Straight up, Tatum for Lillard? Would you do it?
I wouldn't. So let's say you're running a business and you have a prized employee who does a lot moving the needle financially. You want to try to make that employee happy and hold on to them as much as you can. For me, that's Jayson Tatum with the sports comparison. Jayson Tatum is still under 25 years old. He's a generational player. He's a walking bucket. He's very good defensively. And every year since he's been into the league, he's gotten better and better. I think this is a guy who you can rely on at the wing position to carry you deep into the playoffs. And already in his short NBA career, he's helped lead the Celtics to the Eastern Conference Finals twice, and we've seen great signs of him being a great player. I honestly sometimes see some Kobe Bryant vibes with Jayson Tatum, and it's really hard to compare him and Jaylen Brown as to which player you would rather trade. If I had to pick one, though, I'm trading away Jaylen Brown because I just don't think there are a lot of Jayson Tatums out there.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Brown here in a second. To me, I know it's a slow start to this season, but Tatum's untradeable. I don't think you can trade Jayson Tatum. At this point, if you are the Boston Celtics, you're talking about a 6'8" guy who can handle, who can shoot, who dropped 50 with no help against the Brooklyn Nets last year in the first round of the NBA playoffs. They had a ton of injuries at that point and a ton of just, I won't say dysfunction, but just operational challenges last year with a variety of injuries, and the coaching and front office change was coming as well, which we learned right after that series. I'm not trading Jayson Tatum. I do not think he is a guy you can trade at this point. He has too much ability that he's shown already, and I think his ceiling is a lot higher than what it's currently at. And currently, you have like a 26-8 guy. He could be a 30-point scorer at some point in his career consistently. I'm not trading that if I'm the Boston Celtics. I hope you guys subscribe to the channel because that's the point. We're trying to grow here at Boston Celtics Today and on all of our Chat Sports channels. Of course, we are airing this live on any given Thursday. If you want free videos on the latest Celtics news, rumors, and a whole lot more around this team, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on Celtics Today, youtube.com/CelticsTV. So those are our thoughts on Tatum. I think we're in the same boat. If you had to pick one, it would be Jaylen Brown. The question is, though, would you? Like, if it's just straight up Lillard for Brown, you doing it at this point? Have you seen enough from this duo, or are you giving it more time?
Man, Damian Lillard and Jayson Tatum would be a fascinating 1-2 punch. Both of them require the basketball a lot. And are we looking at a Celtics team that is struggling because of that reason that Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum both don't want to relinquish their ball-handling duties and their opportunities to shoot the basketball? Here's the point about Jaylen Brown, and the same can be said for Tatum, and I just got done talking about it. The development and the growth of the player has been exceptional. I never thought that when Jaylen Brown came into the league, he'd be averaging, and I know we're only a few games into the season, but I didn't think he'd be close to becoming a player where he's averaging 27 points per game,
he's been
6+ rebounds, shooting almost 51% from the floor. That's crazy, and he gives you more defensively than a guy like Jayson Tatum. Now, I thought what producer Marshall Green said, and we have to bring him into this conversation, he said, I think it might be a hot take, but I think Jaylen Brown is the alpha dog over Jayson Tatum. I'm not sure that's the case, but it's a fascinating conversation to have because the Celtics might get to a point, at some point, where they have to trade away one of these guys. Marsh, take it away.
Yeah, and I say that because at the end of the day, I like my best player to be able to lead the offense. Jaylen Brown can clearly do that, averaging 27 above 50% from the field. But he also has that dog in him where it's like, nah, I'm guarding their other team's best player. I'm not holding that against Jayson Tatum because I think he is more developed and has a higher ceiling on the offensive end. But I just feel like that team and just the swag and the dog that Brown is, they come around him a little bit more, and he's kind of the leader. In the fourth quarter, when I've watched them play, they've played the Knicks, it just seems like he is the igniter on that offense. While at the same time, you can throw the ball to Tatum, and he'll roll out and get you 30 or 40. But at the end of the day, I think the more complete player is Brown. But I do want to say, if I were to build around one player on the Celtics, it would be Tatum because I think his ceiling is higher.
That's kind of my point. And look, I think if I had to pick one, I would trade Brown. Now, I would let this play out a little longer, but say they're around 500 at the trade deadline and Portland's like, we'll give you Dame for Brown straight up, I think that's something I have to heavily consider for that point, and I would probably do just because, yes, can Brown ignite the offense? Yeah, but Dame can give you some playmaking, even though he's a score-first guy. He's going to give you 5, 6, 7 assists a game. Brown's at 2.5 assists a game. He doesn't necessarily make others around him better offensively. Now, to Marsh's point, he can go lock down a dude, and Dame ain't doing that. So I certainly understand that. But when I think of the Boston Celtics, I think of a team that's always trying to win championships. That's how it should be. And I think Danny Ainge missed some opportunities over the last half decade. He held on to assets. He held on to assets. He held on to assets. Now
it's gotten a lot of superstars.
Now it's the Brad Stevens show. Does he have a different approach, or is he going to be patient with this duo? We'll see what happens. It's definitely going to be interesting. We did get a super chat on this topic. Let's let Silas weigh in here. You win playoff games with defense. When you're off, you got to get to the line. You also need to make others better. Chatham gives you 1 of 3. Tatum does.
Tatum. It's actually an interesting point. It is an interesting point.
I think
Tatum's a better defender than what people give him credit for.
Yeah, he's not Brown. But I'll also argue this, Silas. Tatum, I think, does make players around him a little more because he's drawing more double teams than Jaylen Brown is. Jaylen Brown, as good as he is, how often are teams actually doubling him? You can't, because then you're leaving Tatum open. And you can't do that. So I get what you're saying, and Brown's definitely a better defender, but hey, this is why we do these shows, because it's open up for debate, and that's why we're the most interactive YouTube channel here on the internet.
This is something that I've just been thinking about so much over the last couple of days because the takes are always churning. When do we start to worry about Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum? I mean, they've been together for a little while. There's been some postseason success, but again, these issues continue to surface about there being a cultural problem within the building. And I know that some people will point to it being ownership, front office, roster, Danny Ainge, Brad Stevens, but clearly on the court, and I'm speaking specifically on the court, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown just aren't really combining or meshing in a way that maybe I envisioned a couple of years ago. And if they go out there this year, and both of them are still on the Celtics after the NBA trade deadline, and they finish 500, maybe a little bit below or a little bit above 500, that's just not up to snuff for what this Celtics fan base and the organization expect. And I saw somebody in the comment section saying this is a bridge year for the Celtics. I disagree. You have two of the, let's say, top 20 to 30 players in the league. Tatum's probably on the cusp of being top 10. It's not a bridge year when you have those guys. Now, could you have done more in free agency for this to, be a little bit of a better team potentially? But I don't know. My worries about this tandem starting to grow just a little bit. Not pressing the panic button just yet, but my concerns are growing.
It's kind of like a poor man's Kawhi and PG. They're both superstar talents, but Kawhi and Paul George don't really lift each other's games because they're so similar.
Yeah.
It's the same with Tatum and Brown. They don't really – I'm not saying they can't play together. I'm saying Tatum's presence doesn't necessarily make Brown better and vice versa. And I think that's what we've seen in Portland over the years is CJ and McCollum, they can average 60 combined, but they don't really elevate one another or enough around them, which is why there's always been chatter of splitting those guys up. So what do you guys think? We wrap it all up. Should the Celtics trade for Dame if it means getting rid of Tatum or Brown? Type Y for yes. Type in for no. Certainly a good discussion. Get your votes in down in the comments.